right. So, speaking of things that'll probably put most people to sleep, what is this I hear about Twinkle Toes McFingerbang potentially being a free agent, or people rumoring he's a, or after this past Wednesday night's AEW Dynamite, would he be classified as a refugee if he left that promotion?
Boy, after this past Wednesday's Dynamite, did his value to AEW go up? Because they have nobody.
No, I don't really think so. I think he's, if anything, more trivial than it. We'll talk about this in a second. But what are you hearing through the grapevine and the folks over there that are on the Harpo beat over at the Wrestling News about his status?
Well, as I've been saying for quite a while, I was pretty positive he'd be the next EVP out the door. People are now putting two and two together about various things. Dave Meltzer reported that there was a much bigger free agent right now, that was a quote, that WWE sees as a priority over signing Jay White, who's also a free agent right now.
Well, let's face it, that's like being the nicest guy in prison, though. It's not like we're talking about, oh, Savage and Piper are available, Jay White, but go ahead.
Well, Jay White's all right, but...
Jay White's all right?
But who could be bigger than Jay White?
You know what? That should be his catchphrase. I'm Jay White and I'm all right.
As long as he doesn't use that voice, I think he'll be all right with it. But what could be bigger than Jay White? Kenny Omega. It's now being reported that Kenny Omega's contract has either expired or was due to expire in early 2023. People are not sure if time was added to the contract due to his injury time. He was out for almost a year. And
well, both those things could be true in that the original contract could expire sometime early this year, but the time could have been added on to it because he was inactive. But Tony, does he have a history of doing that? That's almost like, I don't know, running a business instead of a daycare.
Well, the other thing is, technically, if you're Omega and you're injured and you can't wrestle, but you're still working on the video game and managing the women's division and having Riho, in the other room, then you're still working for AEW.
Well, but does he have two contracts? Is one an EVP contract? Is the other a wrestling contract? And then the EVP contract couldn't have been frozen or paused or put into suspended animation, chained in the bowels of a slave ship. So he could technically have two different contracts that would expire at different points in time. If this was all run like a real business, because that would legitimately be what it would be in the WWE.
Well, maybe we'll find out what he will be in the WWE.
So, but I said I was going to address this. Let me ask you this. I was going to wait for the review of this. I called one of the shows here not long ago that we watched the Plan 9 from outer space of wrestling programs, but this wasn't even entertainingly bad. It just was depressingly bad. Sort of like, slowly watching mold grow. But the EVPs, the Buckaroos and Harpo, with their little gang, knock it the fuck off, and there was Don Fallis and Cutlet behind the camera. Their contribution to this rotten, miserable television program with absolutely no star power that AEW aired this past Wednesday night was a backstage little comedy skit with Top Flight and AR Fox so they can have a rematch on the Friday night show that nobody watches. And
it was in a different time slot too.
Yes, and they did that in a mock comedy fashion where the comedy's not really funny, but you can tell they're just assing off because they're not taking anything seriously. And so apparently for people who like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing those people like. But these are the same three nitwits that it drove viewers off the Wednesday night program in record numbers here with that Best of 7 fiasco. And that was their contribution, was 2 minutes of backstage comedy with their friends, while the entire company out there on national television is twisting in the wind like a fucking outlaw that had been strung up on Boot Hill in the Old West.
Hey, whether you like him or not, and we all know where you stand, how do you justify having a former AEW world champion, since he's come back, be used the way he has, especially when you have so many problems at the top of the card.
That's the open questions that I was going to ask. What are the matches that people are clamoring for? If there's the kind of people that like that kind of thing, if there's fans of the Buckaroos and there's fans of Twinkle Toes, what matches are dream matches that those fans want to see? What are they involved in that anybody is clamoring for? What's the natural next main event money drawing match for old Kenny Olivier? What is the next hot tag team rivalry that could meet or surpass the demand that there was at one time from all the fans for an FTR Buckaroos rubber match? What does anybody want them to do right now? They're in nothing. They've got their own belts. They wrestle some of their gymnastic friends, on TV shows that on Wednesday night, the people tune out, or on Friday night, nobody's there to begin with. What money drawing pay-per-view match would you put that in now? Now, some people, it would be a dream if they wrestled Top Flight with trampolines surrounding the ring. I'm talking about, what would you try to draw money with in a main event or feature pay-per-view match involving any of the three of these guys right now with the rest of the roster in that company that anybody would be interested in to the level of any fucking thing? What would that be right now?
Well, there's only two potential things. And let's just also say, obviously, they're going with House of Black versus the Elite, which we talked about them going in that direction.
Well, boy, there you go. Top Flight and AR Fox to the House of Black. Boy, that's going to be exciting. That's going to get tons of interest. Since we haven't even seen the House of Black on television, unless every time the segment fades to black for a commercial, that's really a House of Black blackout. We saw Buddy get beat. And
by Darby.
By Darby. So okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think there's only two potential things right now with the roster there that could make some money. Nothing with Jericho. I don't think anything with MJF right now in those guys. I think possibly if it was actually booked well, and right there is the thing that would cancel this, Blackpool Combat Club, who, by the way, have no one from Blackpool now aligned with their club, versus the Elite. And of course, the big one that's the big one for the company would be Punk and FTR versus the Elite. But so many different intangibles would have to be settled, I guess, for that to
work. And basically that match, I will agree with you, would generate revenue and interest and talk and etc. And Blackpool Combat Club, and then
just because of the people, and if it was booked right, that's why I threw that in there.
Well, but again, then you've got three guys who desperately want to be taken seriously, and Moxley and Claudio, and I hate to group Claudio. He's just kind of the nice guy standing in this group and useless. And you've got three guys who refuse to try to act like they want to be taken seriously in the EVPs. So that would be a clash of styles if ever I've seen one. But
hey, can we talk about Kenny Omega in the WWE? Because, if Young Bucks went there, I said it without if Young Bucks went there, if the Young Bucks went there and they weren't in NXT, if they were on the main roster, we kind of could see who they'd be working with. We kind of have an idea of what they would want to do. It would be different in the WWE confines, but we could see it play out. I could see them working there for a couple years. Kenny Omega, again, regardless of what you think of him, what other people think of him, what I think of him, he's kind of like Jacob deGrom. Do you know who Jacob deGrom is?
I have no clue.
He was a pitcher for the Mets. Came up like 2014, Rookie of the Year. Next year went to the World Series. A few years later, back-to-back Cy Young Awards. The award for the best pitcher in the league. Was unhittable. Was as good as you could be. Since that time, in 3 years, he's pitched 36 games. The Mets didn't give him a big contract. He went to the Texas Rangers, got a big contract. Season hasn't even started yet. We're in spring training. He's already hurt. If you're WWE, knowing what your schedule is, for main eventers or for people who are on every show, How could you sign Kenny Omega? Do you have any faith he could actually stay healthy and work any kind of regular schedule?
Well, I agree that's a concern because what is he now, 37, 38? He's now older than Ricky Morton or Robert Gibson were when I brought them to Smoky Mountain Wrestling as the Rock and Roll Express. Oh, well, 39. There you go. So he's a 40-year-old guy. He's got no proven record in their only competition of drawing any ratings. Quite the opposite. They know he's a prickly personality, and he's in it for his art. And I've said before, if they made an offer for him, it would be so the other guys wouldn't have him, just to disrupt them. And it's a minute expense on the WWE's part. But also, two things would happen. Either they would think that he's a complete imbecile or a lunatic with the way that he thinks and talks and acts and views things, or conversely, they would give him a nervous breakdown with the way that the WWE thinks and acts and talks about things. And it wouldn't be a pleasant, cooperative collaboration of a relationship. So either one, I think it would be entertaining just to see what the big flame up of whatever description, or whenever they, I mean, we know he doesn't mind acting like a complete fucking imbecile in public, but when they, do whatever they would tell him to do that would violate some principle of his for his art, oh boy, here we go.
I don't think he could do it. I don't think Kenny Omega would be able to work within the WWE system. Also, the other thing is you're taking a bunch of guys like Dusty Rhodes, in a sense. Taking a bunch of guys who had power, and all of a sudden they're just guys on the roster. A bunch of guys who did only what they wanted to do. Next thing you know, they're being told who they're going to work with or what they're going to say. And these guys aren't Cody Rhodes in terms of what they can go out there and do on the mic, so they're probably not going to have the leeway that a Paul Heyman or a Cody Rhodes or whoever else actually has leeway does. How is, again, separate from the Bucks, just Kenny Omega, how is he going to fit into that system? How are the WWE fans who loved Cody in a way that AEW fans didn't, how are they going to take to Kenny Omega's style of talking? It's not necessarily conducive to a wide audience enjoying his way of speaking and what he's saying. So, I mean, there's lots of things like that. And then who's he going to work with? I'm all for it if they book him and Randy Orton, just so we can get weeks of that, because that'll turn into a disaster. But, I think they'll do it because they're WWE, and this would be a big move. And this would be a big shot at Tony, who right now is in the midst of a meltdown about his feud with WWE. I think they'll do it. I just don't know what the value would be for 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that they would be planning the future around Mr. Olivier. But we'll check back in as we learn more about his contractual status. I'm sure it'll all come out in the potential lawsuit they've still got hanging over their head from CM Punk anyway. But
you think he'll be gone before the video game comes out?
Wouldn't that be hilarious? But what we've heard about how much this video game has cost and all the problems they've had and how long it's taken, if he's not gone by the time it comes out, he might be gone shortly after it comes out. Yeah, again, trust a guy to develop a multi-million-dollar video game who has had plenty of experience playing video games.